Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome to Traveler Tuesday. Today we are going to have a closer look at the pretty newly released, Traveler Aliens of Charted Space Volume 2 from Mongoose Publishing. This is a new book from Mongoose Publishing, obviously, and it is for use with the Mongoose Traveler 2nd edition rules. At some point I would like to do a comparison video between the 1st and 2nd editions of Mongoose Traveler. There is very high cross-compatibility between the two in either case, at least for supplementary materials. Characters are going to look somewhat different, but the two game systems are fairly similar, and they're both fairly similar to Classic Traveler, if that's what you're into, or Cepheus Engine, if you prefer that particular flavor. So let's take a look at Aliens of Charted Space, Volume 2. So we see right away that this is a 273-page book, which does mean that it's a bit smaller than the last volume, actually, but it only covers 3 races. In this case, the Solomani, the Hivers, and the Droyne. And I'm happy to say, I've looked at this already, that the weird problem with the Aslan, where their history is just left out of the book, is not the case with any of these races. So let's take a look at what we get. There's a general introduction, which is got the sort of bullet points, highlights of these 3 races. The Solomani are the humans from Earth, by the way, or Terra as it's called in the official Traveler universe, although the Solomani call it Earth, I believe. The Imperials call it Terra, if I'm not mistaken. There was a lengthy series of wars between the then Solomani, or then Terran Federation, I believe, and the First or Villani Imperium that resulted in the collapse of the Villani Imperium, and the Terrans kind of came in and took over. That was the Second Imperium. It lasted for a few hundred years. Then that fell apart due to structural weaknesses that were endemic to the whole system that the Terrans had taken over. And then there's a long interregnum, the long night, after which the Silean Federation arises and founds the Third Imperium, and that is the Imperium that we currently have in most Traveler timelines. That gets a little complicated, but sort of the default Traveler timeline is something like 1100 years into that Third Imperium calendar. So these are baseline humans. The modern, if you will, Solomani in terms of that year 1100 Imperial, they're kind of dicks. So be aware of that. They have a predilection based on the politics of the setting to be racists and human supremacists and Solomani supremacists specifically. This book doesn't really delve too much into that. They're not monolithic in that way. That is, kind of a common position within the Solomani party, which is the dominant party in Solomani politics. But that does not mean that if you're playing a Solomani character, you have to be an asshole. So this goes back into the origins of Homo sapiens on Terra. So in the setting, if you're not familiar with this, human species are all over the place, independently arisen human species. And this is a big mystery. When the Villani, start to travel among the stars, that there are all these other human races that are out there too. How did that happen? Well, how it happened is that the ancients came to Earth about 300,000 years ago and transplanted very early Homo sapiens to a variety, several hundred different planets. Some of them died out, some of them evolved in ways that make them reproductively incompatible with other human minor races. They're all minor races except for the Solomani, the Villani, and the Jodani, which we covered last time in Aliens of Charted Space Volume 1. So the ancients is the reason why there's humans everywhere, and that's kind of like an old-timey science fiction trope. Is that we would assume that the aliens were all pretty human. It's a built into Lensman, for E.E. Doc Smith's Lensman series, for example, and that's by no means the only example. Traveler actually built on the science fiction of that and the following eras, built in a reason for that from the very beginning. Actually, this idea arises from the game Imperium, which eventually sort of merged into the official Traveler universe. And Imperium, if we haven't talked about it before. By the way, tune in Monday for the counterclipping stream. We'll be talking about these interfaces that Traveller did with between the wargaming and role-playing worlds. Imperium is the earliest of those, actually, and is one of the highlights. So we have this quite extensive history, actually, which is great. I mean, I like to read this stuff. You want the context for why these groups or species or nations or whatever they are the way they are right now. This is that context, at least for the humans. Here's the rule of man, which is the Second Imperium. The term Solomani first appeared in history at the beginning of the rule of man. It is traced to a holographic recording made by Admiral Estigarba, in which he addresses the people of the Vallani worlds in their own language. Okay, so I guess that implies that Solomani, the men of Sol, is the Vallani originating word for it. So, and they talk about that word, the men of Sol, the only men, the soul men, or even all men. That's kind of been built in from the very beginning in the old library data book as well. Solomani and the Long Night. The Solomani did fight a series of wars called the Aslan Border Wars, as the Aslan were expanding out from their homeworld. And then we have the rather fractious relationship between the Solomani and the Third Imperium. The current Solomani Confederation, that is. And here's the Solomani movement, which is the, movement of jerks that we mentioned before. And this actually talks about that quite a bit. You don't want the species to seem monolithic. And Solomani are one example that's kind of a special case because it's us, right? You don't really want them to seem monolithic. You want their societies to seem informed by their biology, but not at the same time, it was raining on Mongo that morning, whereby you can have these like little bullet points that apply to absolutely every member of the species. There's value in a role-playing game in stereotypes, because they give players and game masters actually sort of a hook to hang the portrayal or representation of a character on. But at the same time, overuse is lazy, and I would advise against that as a general course of action. So we're still in Solomani movement here. Here's the birth of the current Solomani state, the Solomani Confederation. So we have just tons and tons and tons of juicy background material on the Solomani here, which is good, because this is actually one of the areas in the traditional Traveller campaign areas, right? First came the Spinward Marches, of course, but the second one was the Solomani Rim sector, and we're going to see a book, I don't know if it's going to be this year or next year, on that area from Mongoose for the second edition, and we're probably going to it's going to be another two-sector book like the current Behind the Claw book, which is very good, which there's a flip through of on the channel. Check that out if you want to see it. So we're really still, I mean, we've kind of had some digressions here, but we're kind of still in about the Solomani Confederation. And then here's the chapter that says about the Solomani Confederation. And then here's the map. Okay, I'm glad this is here because you want to see, this, again, context. And I don't want to have to go out to travelermap.com. You could certainly do that, but I don't want to have to do that if I'm reading the book in bed, for example. So here's the Solomani Confederation. This is obviously supposed to be in landscape. Can I rotate this thing? Yes, but that's the wrong way. Okay, so here's the landscape map. I think the Solomani book will contain Solomani Rim and Alpha Crucis, I believe. I'd really like to see something on these sectors down here, Canopus, Aldebaran, and New World, or even Spica, because we have seen nothing on those areas. And Spica would be cool because we've never seen a Hiver sector. Or at least, or even a sector in which the Hivers are present in any really significant way. We have seen these sectors up here in the past. Hinterworlds has gotten some detail before. All right, so moving right along, and let's rotate back. We do get, this is rather nice too, we do get these little summaries of the characters of the individual sectors. Dark Nebula and the Austral Quadrant, I think, were the sectors that got fought over in the Aslan Border Wars. Let's wait for it to load again. That is indeed the case. There's also like a lot of Solomani activity and small settlements and stuff to rimward of, that's on this map, that would be to the right of the page. That's toward the rim of the galaxy, and we've never really seen much about that. I would like to see something about that as well. Okay, here's some stuff about different kinds of worlds in the Solomani Confederation. Maybe it's simply because there's only 3 different species, major races, handled in this book, as opposed to the other one, which has 4. But I'm more pleased, significantly, with the detail in this second book than I was in the first one. And they came out, they didn't come out together, they came out a couple months apart, so I kind of feel like there was some feedback in between the books. And here's Solomani Society. The Solomani cause and the Solomani movement. This talks actually about different races in the Solomani Confederation. This is actually an interesting point. There are a decent number of Aslan in the Solomani Confederation, for example. Primitive indigenous aliens. It's a uniquely Solomani way to put it. Dolphins, uplifted dolphins are a thing, and apes are a thing. Vargar home territories are kind of far away, but Vargar tend to belong fairly well in human space because they're, canines. So they are present here. They talk about the Hivers, non-Solomani humans. There's also the vegans, or the vegans, which they don't mention here. That's unfortunate. Technically, I think they're in Imperial space. Actually, if you look, I would have to show you the map, but there's a fairly weird and alien race called the vegans. That's just to corward of Terra, and they have had a very, very unpleasant relationship with the Solomani over the course of that history. But I think their territory is more or less inside the Third Imperium now. Now, here's a whole section dealing with the subject of Solomani, racism, bigotry, and the cult of greatness. You can assume that this is maybe a piece of contemporary political commentary, but this has been in the Solomani as a feature of the Solomani since the original Solomani book in like 1983 or whatever. Yeah, it was probably a little later than that. It's probably around 1985. But this has kind of been built in that whole time. What we've never had a book, that's not true, but I'll get to that in a second. There has only ever been one treatment of the Villani, and they're very important, right? They founded the First Imperium, and they're a major and important feature of the Second and Third Imperiums, the one that we're supposed to be in right now. They're the third major human major race, and we've only ever gotten a book on them once, and unfortunately it's one of the old Digest Group books, which means that it does not have clear intellectual property claimed within the sort of the Traveler family. The guy who has the rights to it wants some crazy amount of money for it, and he does not appear willing to play ball, apparently. So I would really, 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 really like to see somebody do a new Villani book, because I think it's important. So this is an interesting thing about the Solomani attitude toward the Imperials, which is still, equally split kind of between the Villani and Solomani cultural influences. It's more Solomani, if anything, to be honest. I mean, that was by design as well. The symbols of the Solomani movement, marshals and heroes of the Confederation. These are like major awards, apparently. Here's the government. We're 60 pages in. We're still with the Solomani, which is, again, I don't know that by page count this is necessarily more information than we were getting in Volume 1, but it feels meatier because you're getting a lot more good background. We haven't even gotten to the character creation part of it yet. Solomani Interstellar Development Corps, which is a somewhat political organization, as I recall. Local governments, Confederation government, the Secretariat. I think it was also intentional to give the sort of the governing bodies within the Solomani Confederation. Remember, it's us, right? Like non-American names. I think that was an intentional thing as well, dating back to the mid-'80s. Confederation public holidays. This is interesting because a couple of these, of course, are days that we celebrate now, and some of them aren't. And it's interesting, to see the ones that aren't. Interstellar politics within the Confederation is far more factionalized than the Imperium, which is interesting, too. Control over matters of interstellar interest, such as foreign policy, trade, and the employment of military power, flow from the bottom up. That's very much interstellar stuff is what the Imperium does, right? That's kind of the Imperium's mandate, and whatever happens locally is kind of the local business unless things get out of hand. Interstellar stuff, the space between the worlds, is the mandate of the Imperium. It doesn't work like that in the Solomani Confederation. Here's a big section on Confederation armed forces. And the different command areas. And it's always good to see this, because if you're going to have especially if you're going to do it like a military campaign, which is a thing, that a campaign type that's getting active support now with the naval campaigns, adventures and stuff. Maybe you have to deal with the Solomani, and it would be very helpful to know how the Solomani Navy works. For example, exploration and survey, the Confederation Army, the home forces, Solomani security. These are kind of the secret police. So we get a big section on them. And this particular piece of art, it very much reminds me of pictures that came out of early Soviet Union and Russian Revolution. Commerce, law, and economics, Solomani corporations. Transtar is the only Solomani corporation to achieve megacorporation status. Local law, Ministry of Justice, task forces, salvage and prospecting, communications. Okay, so here's some spotlights on worlds of the Confederation, starting with Terra, as you'd expect. We get a nice map, too. And it's cool that... and you're going to notice the absence of Florida. Something you'll see on this map. Let's put it that way. There's a lot's happened in the ensuing 3,000 or 4,000 years since now. So the Solomani still use the hour calendar system, hour year numbers. By the way, the Imperials do not. There's home, which is Terra is Terra. Under military occupation by the Imperium. That's kind of varied from time to time. There was a war not too long ago, the Solomani Rim War, and it ended in defeat by the Solomani Confederation and occupation of Terra. So here, home is the new Solomani Rim capital, or the Solomani Confederation capital. Jingleswelt, the first great fortress in Dark Nebula. Okay, so this is in Dark... The fact that it's in Dark Nebula is interesting. It kind of means it's one of those worlds in the border area with the Aslan. Meson guns and planetary defense. Elation, rimward border world, very rimward frontier of the Solomani Configuration in the Toria subsector of Aldebaran. Okay, and here we're going to get into ships. I think the idea, I'm not sure, I didn't see character generation stuff. We'll check that in a second. Here's some new ship gear. Small utility boat. It's not incredibly interesting looking. Large utility boat. Small packet boat. How big is this thing? 100 tons. So this is not that dissimilar from the classic Suleiman Scout Courier that we see in a lot of Traveler products. Thalassa Small Transport. It's got sort of a manta ray look to it. This is a 400-ton ship. Saxby System Defense Boat, which is a 600-ton vessel. That's got a kind of boxy look to it. And, okay, so here's Central Supply Catalog for the Solomani, for Solomani gear. Officer's Revolver, which looks super bulky. Officer's Sword. Swords are kind of a thing in Traveler because some characters will come from primitive worlds. Sometimes you'll be on a primitive world. Sometimes you'll be fighting in starship corridors or other confined spaces where firearms are less useful and you'll want a melee weapon. And they're also ceremonial. These are tech level 12. That's got to be fancy. Tech level 12 swords. Navy combat shotguns. Here's some rifles. Confederation Army ammo bot. Mortar bot. Companion animals. Okay, so here's character generation. Not sure if we're going to get new... What I don't remember is if we're going to get new careers. But we are getting... Yeah, looks like we are. New careers. New for the Navy, the party, for if you're Solomani party apparatchik, and for Solsec. And then the ones you're not supposed to join or have restrictions are the Marines, the Navy, the Nobles. You use this Navy career instead. The Noble career is unavailable. If you're interested in being one of the elite, you should join the Solomani party. And the Scouts are unavailable. A traveler who wants a similar experience should enlist in the Confederation Navy instead. Okay. So new career. Here's the party career. The specializations are official, intellectual, or militant. That makes, again, that rings Russian Revolution era Communist Party to me. The Navy is split between crew, technical, and flight, which I think is more or less the same as it is for the Imperials. But the skill breakdown is probably going to be a little bit different. And the ranks are different as well. Oh dear, we got the NCO ranks are, I'm afraid, other than Zero Starman, are copy-pasted from the party here. I didn't notice this on the first pass. So we've got some errata here. Sorry. The officer ranks look correct. Okay, and Solsec ranks look correct. But it looks like it's structured more like a police organization than a military organization, which does make sense given what it is. Solsec field agents, administrators, or secret agents. Okay. And then here's some new life events. Here's some recruitment pay. Did I see that? Retirement pay. Terran Adventurers Society. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Travelers Aid Society hostels and operations in the Solomani Confederation were taken over by the Solomani Party in 870. They became the Terran Adventurers Society, a similar organization whose membership is open only to racial Solomani. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to get into the Droyne, and we are 24 minutes into the episode already, so this could be a long one. Sorry about that. So the Droyne are these sort of hexapedal, two of their limbs are wings, small, sometimes primitive, but sometimes not, race that are scattered throughout charted space in a very mysterious way, and that is because they are there's kind of more to this, but they are sort of the descendants of the ancients. Their homeworld is unknown. I'm not sure how much that will be discussed here, but it's, the humans who are interested in this topic are like looking for the lost Droyne homeworld, but I'm not sure whether it was destroyed or taken by Grandfather into a pocket dimension. His pocket dimension. All right, so here's our Droyne history. We'll try and clip wacky Droyne theories. Okay, that's amusing. Like the Droyne who have fallen so far as to become less sentient are the Chirpers. And it wasn't like put together that they were the same species for quite a while. So it looks like we have multiple wacky Droyne theories, sidebars, which is actually cool. Count me one of the people who is not entirely set. Droyne as the descendants of the ancients I'm completely comfortable with. But I'm not completely comfortable with Grandfather and all that. And the details of Final War that wiped out the ancients. It's kind of built in, but it's also kind of easy to excise out of the Traveler universe if you don't want it. That there were ancients is kind of built in, and that's hard to get rid of. But this specific, the Grandfather story, is actually detail that is pretty easy to replace with whatever you prefer. I do think that the random word generation for the Droyne tends to work better than for most of the other, really all of the other random word generators. The Droyne also tend to be fairly psionic, by the way, which is problematic in the Imperium. But a lot of Droyne in Imperial space are pretty primitive anyway, so they're not like traveling around. Droyne military and navy, these are entirely local establishments where they exist on a more advanced Droyne worlds. And they run the complete gamut from like completely primitive sticks and stones type places to like TL-15, right? They're not really above that, but TL-15 is kind of the standard Imperial human maximum. There's one or two in according to TravelerMap.com. There's like 2 or 3 worlds in the Imperium that are TL-16, and that's a new development. Politics and commerce. This is interesting. So they're caste-based species as well. And these coins are a component in this casting ceremony that determines which caste a Droyne will be assigned to. There's some stuff on Droyne worlds, including Andor, which is one of the ones that was dealt with in one of the early adventures concerning the Droyne. Remember, this was one of the big mysteries of the Traveler universe early on. Autari in the Trojan Reach. That's interesting. Kleinor, which is in the Solomani Rim. This thing, which I'm not trying to pronounce, in the no-return subsector of Crucis Margin sector. We are not going to even attempt that. Here's some new Droyne psionics abilities, which is cool. And here's some stuff on Droyne ships. So this is much more in line with what we saw with the 4 races in the previous book. I feel like we got about twice as much out of the Solomani. Communications vessels. Mercantile expedition vessels. Military expedition vessels. This is a 1,200-ton ship. It's a pretty big ship. And it's a TL-13, too. One of the conceits of Traveler is that different worlds will have different tech levels. It's kind of built into the system as well. Technological development is not evenly distributed among the stars. Central supply catalog for Droyne gear, which is pretty... I like this Eclipse shield. That's pretty neat. Leader rod. Armors, which is a little harder to do if you're... you're a winged species. So the wings are vestigial. They're not normally... You can't normally use them to fly, but on most worlds, there are exceptions. Worlds that have like lower gravity, denser atmospheres, stuff like that, then sometimes they can. Here are mechanical wings to assist a Droyne whose wings are too wimpy to do that, or who have lost them through whatever reason. Ritual and psionic items. We're going to get a discussion of the coin. We already have seen a discussion of the coins here. Droyne flight. In many individuals, they're vestigial and cannot support flight under any circumstances. That's probably going to be a world-to-world thing. That's how I would probably be inclined to play it. Since these planets have been separated for 300,000 years, they will have evolved in different directions. So there's a skill for each cast, which is kind of routine duties of whatever the cast does. So like the technician cast, their technician abilities will be handled through that cast skill. But the casts are pretty narrow too, right? So a Droyne technician is going to be absolute trash at anything else, right? Which is why if you're playing a Droyne character, you're probably going to be in the sport cast, which is kind of the jack of all trades. I don't want to use that term because that's a specific skill in Traveler, but they're the non-specialist cast. Outsider skill used in dealings with non-Droyne. I like the treatment of the Droyne in this section. It's pretty solid. We're probably going to get, we're going to get a career for each cast, which completely works. So workers have 3 paths there: farming, laboring, and building. Warriors have warrior, guard warrior, and voyaging. Technicians are fixing, artificer, and dreaming. The drones, vital to Droyne reproduction and raising young, and also important to ritual, social, and managerial functions. Okay, family, priestly, and social. Interesting. Here's the sports. Again, they're used as scouts and emissaries, but they're multi-purpose. They're not super narrow like the rest of the casts. Sports dedicated to finding, speaker, and seeking. And you're going to see that you're stuck with your cast's career here. I'd be inclined to be a little bit flexible with that if I had a player as a game master, if a player had a reason to do it, but I would need a reason, so I think that's okay. And then here's the leader cast. Droyne benefits. Here's the coins. And we've seen images of these over the years as well. Droyne as travelers. So here's a discussion of that. Droyne and Hivers, we're probably going to see this with the Hivers as well. The Hivers are the most alien of the major races. The Droyne are pretty alien too. You can look at the picture and say, oh, they're little lizard guys. Well, yeah, but there's a lot more and better development of them than that. That said, as I mentioned in one of the comments to the last video, the Traveler universe is kind of what you make of it, right? It exists as a framework for you to do your own development in. So, if you don't like the Hivers or you don't like the Vargur or whatever, you just leave them out and make your own subsector to start with that. And a subsector is more than enough to start with. So the Hivers are these sort of sentient starfish. They're called Hivers because, this is the story anyway, the in-universe story, because their homes, like the Hiver cities that were first seen by humans, looked like hives. They are not communal intelligence or anything like that. In fact, they're very individualistic. They're also quite smart. Here's a big section on the history of the Hive Federation. Wacky Hiver theories. That's cool. Oh, when this talks about that, actually. Hiver comes from a theory propounded in the Imperium that they shared some kind of hive mind, possibly including other members of the Hive Federation. Nests were originally referred to as hives. I like my version of that story better, actually. But conflict with the Kree. So that's been an ongoing thing. The Hiver space borders, but not really quite borders. There's a big no man's land in the middle. But butts up against or comes close to Kree space. And the Hive Federation includes a lot of other species besides the Hivers, only one of which has ever been seriously developed. The Ithklur, which we'll see a mention of here later. And here they are. Here's 3 different other races of the Hive Federation. This is more than we typically get. We have the Ithklur, who actually got their own book back in the days of Traveler of the New Era. The Gurvan and the Zatachk, who are quadrupeds. Okay, and now some of these races are meat-eating races, which is why the Ithklur specifically, which is why the Kree don't like them. And want to exterminate them, so we're clear on that. Modern Hiver Society, big section on this. This talks about the topical clubs, basically This actually reminds me of gaming, actually. The Topical Club is a club for people who are interested in, or hivers, who are interested in a specific topic. It's like a Facebook group, right? And you join the Topical Club and talk about the topic, and individual hivers will go off and become members of different topical clubs because they're actually highly individualistic. This talks about the Hiver military. The hivers themselves are not particularly militaristic or aggressive or good at killing stuff. That's why they wanted the Ithclur as part of their federation, because the Ithclur are pretty good at those things. Here's commerce and exploration. They also have this thing about manipulations, which I feel like, and that's kind of been... I feel like it's played up a little too much for my tastes. They are the manipulators, the master manipulators. And they're manipulating everybody around them. Here's our map. Let's rotate this. Try to do it the right way this time. Of the Hive Federation. It is the Hive Federation, not the Hiver Federation. And we'll see that it pretty much comes right up against the 2000 worlds. That's the Kukri state. I thought there was a little more dead space that maybe this map is not representing. And then they share a border with the Solomani as well. But I like that they include the book here. It wasn't really possible to do that with the Droyne because they're all over charted space and outside charted space as well. The Blascon region of interest. The Trailing Bulge. These are various areas inside the Hiver space. Here's some more wacky Hiver theories. Here's the Hiver homeworld, actually. And Glia is the actual capital of the Hive Federation, just because they said, hey, our homeworld is not centrally located. This place is. Tearing Antes lies close to the border with the Solomani. World's population of around 800,000 Hive Federation citizens includes some Hivers, but is mostly made up of other races, which is interesting. But the Solomani Federation is a multiracial federation that is dominated by the Hivers. Uo, lying at the trailing edge of the Hive Federation. Oh, the other thing is that they don't have a spoken language. They communicate by gesture. So they have to have machine help to speak. Here's the section for Hiver starships. I'm not, like, amazingly thrilled with these Jawa-looking starships, particularly. Just the image of the ships. The deck plans are fine and nice, certainly nice to have. But I've often felt that Travelers lagged behind the state-of-the-art on, cool-looking starships, to be honest. In a lot of cases, it's because of this legacy art that has existed for decades now. But that's not really the case here. These at least have a distinctive look, which I do like. All right, so here's Hive equipment. The voder, which is the mechanical device to let them speak. Furniture. Here's the cool Hiver personal weapons. They're like little tentacles at the end of the starfish arms, sort of grasp this ball. So this is a pistol, and this is a larger weapon. This is probably the best picture we have, weirdly enough, of the radial design of the Hiver. So they have 6 arms, one of which kind of functions more as a head. The other arms end in manipulator tendrils that they can use to grasp things. And here's our big section on, we'll see how big in a minute, not that big, on Hiver PCs. So a whole bunch of detail on that, which is nice. And here are our careers. We have the academic, the generalist, the manipulator, the merchant. So this is interesting, actually. The manipulator here includes military leaders, right? Because you're trying to outsmart other people if you're a military leader. So it's inaccurate to say that this manipulation feature of the race is all like psychohistory type stuff, right? It includes generally outfoxing other races, other people, right? Other Hivers too sometimes. Obviously, they started doing this with Hivers themselves. Here's merchants. Didn't we already see this, Hive versus Travelers? Because this is a different section. All right, and then here's Aliens of Charted Space Volume 1. I'm going to stay on the Traveler topic because we have a Traveler Kickstarter coming up pretty soon. We might be doing that next week. So I hope that you have enjoyed. Let's go back to this because I don't want that image hanging around for very long because people will think then it's the Volume 1 video. I do hope that you have enjoyed the video. Stay tuned. We'll be back on Traveler Tuesday for next Tuesday. In the meantime, if you'd like to support Ardwulf's Lair, there's links to the Patreon and the merch store in the video description. Please do subscribe to the channel, like and comment, and I will see you next time. Until next time, happy gaming.